Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate 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 Vasudevaya.
Vyasavacha. Iti samprashna samrishto vipranam harshanihi prajipujya vachastesham prabhaktum upachakrame.
The Grasrava Sutta Goswami, the son of Ramaharsan, being fully satisfied by the perfect questions of the Brahmanas, thanked them and thus attempt to reply.
Sutavacha yam prajavantamanupetamapetakrityam dvepayano viraha taro java putriti tanmayataya taravo dus samsarva bhutardaya nimmanatasmi.
Srila Sutta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the great sage Sukadev Goswami, who could enter the hearts of all when he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home without undergoing reformation. By the sacred thread of ceremony observed by the higher castes. His father Vyasadev, fearing separation from him, cried out, "Oh my son, indeed only the trees which were absorbed in the same feeling of separation echoed in response to the bereaved father."
Yasanubhavamaki nashruti saramika adhyatmadipamatitir tamo nidam samsarinam karunaya purana guyam tam vyasasunum upayani gurumaninam.
Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Shuka, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who out of his great compassion of those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge after having personally assimilated by experience.
Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudire.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan, Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author.
Munaya sadhu prishtoham bhavad beroka mangalam yat krita krishna samprashno yenatma suma prishtidati.
I have been Sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna, and so
Did you not know that there was the
this world.
I know. What are you reading?
Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self.
Vaibhamsa paradormo yato bhaktir doksije ahaitukiya pratihata yayan suchidati.
The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain the loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotion service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to complete safety.
Okay. Vasudeve Bhagavati Yoga Prayojita Janayati Suvairagyam Nanam Chayadahaitukam.
By rendering devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world.
Dharmasanashtita pumsam Vishvakshena Katashuya Nogpadayediratim Shama Eva Kevalam.
The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke at traction of the message for the message of the personality of Godhead.
Dharmasya pavragrasya Tartore tapakalpate Nartasya dharmamekandasya Kamulabhaya Ismata.
Occupational engagements are certainly meant for unlimited, ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupation service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification.
Kamasya nindriya priti Abhujivet yavata Jivasya tattva jignasa Tanto yasche karmavi.
Life desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life, or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works.
Vadanti tattvavidas Tatpramyagnanam Ramanti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Sajjate.
Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan.
Tatshridadana munayo Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya Pashyanti Atmani Tatmanam Bhakta Shruta Grihitaya.
The seriously inquisitive student of sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realized that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he had heard from Vedanta Shruti.
Atapam Vertiji Shrishta Varnashrama Vibhagasaha Sanutishtasya Dharmasya Samsidya Haritoshanam.
A best among twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed from one's own occupation according to past divisions and orders of life to please the personality of God.
Prasmanekena Manasa Bhagavan Satpatampati Shrutavaya Krititvaya Yascha Deya Pujasta Nityata.
Therefore, with one's pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees.
Yadanutyashina Yukta Karmagrani Tidibandhanam Chindanti Govidaspasya Kornakorya Katatam Pratim.
With swords in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma. By remembering the personality of Godhead, therefore, who will not pay attention to his message.
Rushushoshadyanasya Vasadeva Taruchi Syanmahatsevya Vipra Punyatirtan Shevanat.
One twice born sage by sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice. Great service is done, by such service one gains affinity for hearing his message of Vasudeva.
Vinvitam Sakata Krishna Punyashravana Kirtana Vediyata Soya Vadrani Vidunoti Surit Satam.
The personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, Supersoul, in everyone's heart, the benefactor of the truthful devotees cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees who had developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sachi and Sridham. Antaranga Prabhu, I'm going to make you host now, Prabhu, for the meeting. Can you hear me, Antaranga Prabhu? Hi, Krishna, Antaranga Prabhu. Can you hear me? You're on mute if you're speaking. Antaranga Prabhu, Hi Krishna. Can anybody else hear me?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
There is an echo in your voice.
Okay. Antaranga Prabhu, we are not able to hear you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol, dear devotees.
Okay, thank you.
First, yes, I would like to first request the devotees to mute themselves, or those which are have the admin rights. If you can mute everyone, please.
Antaranga Prabhu, you have the admin and host rights now, so you're host. Yeah.
Okay, so let me see. Okay. Okay. So there is Dilip Prabhu. Okay, I don't know how to do this. I'm not very good.
So Prabhu, if you click on the participant tab and just say mute all, and that's it. Antaranga Prabhu, if you like, you can make Jyoti Mataji, I'm going to make you host, so you can help Antaranga Prabhu with this.
Yes, I did. Sridham and Sachi, I made the co-host.
Oh, okay, because they may be leaving shortly, Prabhu. So if you don't mind making, there is an ID called DEV. If you type that in the search box and make her a co-host, Jyoti Mataji.
Devika, yeah.
Devika, there, and then she can mute everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, Prabhu.
Okay, Devika Jai, co-host.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So yes, if you can kindly mute devotees for me. Not that I don't want to hear you, but there's a bit of a technical glitch there. Okay, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Long time no see. Vanchakalpatarupyascha kripasindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavabhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much. Wonderful recitation. It was very nice. Very beautiful pronunciation, very nice meters and everything. So thank you for that. And straight away, we're going to jump into today's verse. It's very interesting that this second chapter of the first canto of the Bhagavad Gita possesses so many beautiful verses, very often quoted and very often referred to by Srila Prabhupada. And today's verse, it's a very interesting one. The verse, text number 5. I'm going to just recite it again. Manaya sadhu prishtoham bhavad birloka mangalam yatkrita Krishna samprashno yanatma suprasidati. Translation. O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. Again, there's someone speaking. We would like to request the devotees to kindly mute themselves, if possible, please, so we can continue. Thank you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Since it has been stated herein before that in the Bhagavatam the absolute truth is to be known, the questions of the sages of Naimisharanya are proper and just, because they pertain to Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth. In Bhagavad Gita 15:15, the Personality of Godhead says that in all the Vedas there is nothing but the urge for searching after him, Lord Krishna. Thus, the questions that pertain to Krishna are the sum and substance of all Vedic inquiries. So maybe we can kind of decompose and go slowly as with Prabhupada purport. So within this first stanza, Prabhupada recites very famous verse. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto matas smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedascha sarvam aham eva veda vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. Within this verse, Krishna is establishing that on the end or on the bottom of the cup of knowledge is actually and ultimately Krishna. Even in the modern scientists, they can only backtrack the movement of the cosmos or of the universe, what they refer to as a Big Bang, right? Which you consider to be like like a culmination or a point of totality, of one ultimate point where everything is emanating from. But then the question may be raised, in our life or within the realm of universe, there's always something like a causality. So the question may be raised, if that singularity was the one point of beginning of the universe, what was before that? Right? Where this sort of one point is emanating from, and what was beyond that point? Was just pure nothing, and this is pure something. So even this modern science comes to an ultimate kind of a point of standing still. And there was a very famous scientist. He said that on the end of the cup of knowledge is actually God. So we understand within this quotation that on the end of all our searchings of what we're looking for is ultimately Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In terms of like Vaishnava etiquette, this verse also very nicely presents this Vaishnava etiquette. O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna. So here we can see how Sukadev Goswami is referring to all these individual sages. We can see how he's referring to all these sages as Munaya, or sages. And then he's kind of giving them sort of like a justification, or he's kind of telling them, yes, this is very good. Because these sort of questions, this samprashna, is very, very important for all of us. This samprashna, these sort of questions and these activities and these sort of reflections, inquiries, are very important for humankind. You see, sometimes it's said that more important than an answer is sometimes a question, because question in itself is indicating that we are actually seeking something which is beyond our realm of understanding. Therefore, questions specifically with relevance to the absolute truth are very, very important. Then within the translation, the continuation is, which are relevant to the world's welfare. We can see in today's and modern society, there are many different political groups, many different unions, many different constellations of representatives of different states, and they come together, and what they do, they try to present the welfare and the truth, which somehow or another can unite and create some kind of a prosperity within the world. And we can see that within last couple of millennia, this never happened. Maybe there was some kind of an indication, or for a very limited amount of time, there was some kind of a coherency or some kind of a cooperation, but ultimately everything crashed down. So the modern society had a chance again and again and again to establish so-called their truths. They had their sort of opportunity to solve problems, material problems, with their material solutions. But here Srimad Bhagavatam, because it's called Amala Purana, which is a spotless old scripture, ultimately presents spiritual truth, which the side effect of this spiritual truth is world's welfare. So if you engage yourself in studying and reading Srimad Bhagavatam, what you are actually doing is that you are not only nourishing yourself, but ultimately you are also pacifying your intellect. We read in the Bhagavad Gita that there is a certain standard of influence which has some kind of a energy or some kind of a power over us. The first point, or the first level of influence, is the influence of the soul. The second level of influence is the influence of the intelligence. The third level is the influence of the mind, and ultimately on the bottom is the influence of the senses. So what Bhagavatam is doing is utilizing spiritual knowledge, and is utilizing spiritual sort of interactions to pacify the material intellect. So then what's happening within our life? We can see how our life is slowly starting taking transition. Somehow or another, our intellect is becoming more and more pacified and more united with the conclusions of the spiritual books. And within this way, we are actually being more and more nourished. And also we are creating, as a side effect of our spiritual nourishment, welfare communities, welfare nations, and ultimately we can create a welfare for the whole world. Just by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, when the mind, body, and the soul becomes happy and pacified, the natural side effect of that will be the whole world become happy. So continuing with the purport of Srila Prabhupada, the whole world is full of questions and answers. The birds, beasts, and men are all busy in the matter of perpetual questions and answers. In the morning, the birds in the nest become busy with questions and answers. And in the evening, also the same birds come back and again become busy with questions and answers. The human being, unless he is fast asleep at night, is busy with questions and answers. The businessmen in the market are busy with questions and answers. And so also the lawyers in the court and then the students in the schools and colleges. The legislators in the parliament are also busy with questions and answers. And the politicians and the press representatives are all busy with questions and answers. Although they go on making such questions and answers for their whole lives, they are not at all satisfied. Satisfaction of the soul can only be obtained by questions and answers on the subject of Krishna. And we can see it's just beautiful how Prabhupada summarized the whole nature of human interactions. In one small little paragraph, he presented truth which been pervade kind of a which was going through the millennia through the human society. And Prabhupada summarized that we are interacting constantly, asking questions and receiving answers. But these sort of questions, they are full of variety of topics, but ultimately, if they do not provoke the desire to listen, the narrations and the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, ultimately the result is only a failure and a waste of time. So yes, we may have our Monday conversations, mundane desires. We can ask about the sports, about the weather, about the political situations. We can ask about variety of things, but ultimately, if that variety of things do not provoke or do not dovetail us to the hearing the narrative and the pastimes of the Lord, they're just waste of time, and that's a fact. Srimad Bhagavatam, as I mentioned, is Amala, without any spot. So when this Amala Purana is recited, because it's constantly speaking about the three predominant topics or three ultimate topics of the Bhagavatam, and that is bhakti as a process, bhakta as a person who is performing the process, and Bhagavan as the ultimate goal of the process. Bhakti, Bhakta, and Bhagavan are the three main narratives of Srimad Bhagavatam. And other 3 points of Srimad Bhagavatam simultaneously are the Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, the philosophy, the practical application, and the goal. So these 3 points are ultimately, they always should be in the back of our head. Don't think that we are not interested to a certain degree of what is happening within the world. No, but we should always understand, you see, Krishna consciousness is something which is irrelevant. It's not activity, or it's not a topic, or it's not a conversation which is out of this world. It's not something which cannot be dovetailed on the micro and the macro level. It's not, don't think that it's not something which can help you with your relationship with the community and in the kind of directing the world at large. No, Krishna consciousness or Srimad Bhagavatam, it's something which nourish the soul, and as I said, the side effect of that is that the whole world becomes pacified. Therefore, we as devotees are always relevant, but within the scope of our relevancy, we always implement a spiritual solution or a spiritual perspective or a spiritual way of observing the problem. Therefore, we are not attracted for for the sake of observing that mundane incident, but rather we are interested in the spiritualizing that mundane incident and ultimately to present it from a perspective of the Shastra. That's what Shastra Chakshu means, the vision of the scriptures. Continuing with the translation of Srila Prabhupada, with the purport, Krishna is our most intimate master, friend, father, or son, an object of conjugal love. Forgetting Krishna, we have created so many objects of questions and answers, but none of them are able to give us complete satisfaction. All things but Krishna give temporary satisfaction only. So if we are to have complete satisfaction, we must take the questions to the questions and answers about Krishna. We cannot live for a moment without being questioned or without giving answers. Because the Srimad Bhagavatam deals with questions and answers that are related to Krishna, we can derive the highest satisfaction only by reading and hearing his transcendental literature. One should learn the Srimad Bhagavatam and make an all-around solution to all problems pertaining to social, political, religious matters. Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna are the sum total of all things. So basically, Prabhupada is emphasizing what I already mentioned here. Prabhupada is emphasizing one interesting thing. Forgetting Krishna, we have created so many objects of questions and answers, but none of them are able to give us complete satisfaction. So from taking from this sentence, we can actually see our own spiritual progress, or some kind of an internal reflection may be offered within a path of our spirituality. And the main point of the reflection is actual satisfaction. We can judge our own satisfaction and it can correlate with our spiritual advancement. And what I mean by that is where we derive our satisfaction from. What is the root of our satisfaction? Is it connected to family? Is it connected to some kind of activities that we perform? Is it connected to the wealth that we possess? Is it connected to the knowledge that we possess? Is it connected to, on the other hand, to some kind of spiritual wealth? Is it connected to some spiritual roots? So to the degree of your spiritual nourishment, to the degree of your spiritual satisfaction, that is the relevant indicator of your spiritual progress. I hope that makes sense. So we should ask ourselves on the practical note, where do I derive my satisfaction from? What is the root of something which offers me pleasure? What is that thing which I more than ever taking shelter of? What's giving me shelter in my life? And that answer which is offered is your level of progress in Krishna consciousness. Then Prabhupada continues, all things but Krishna give temporary satisfaction only. And this is very important fact that we should very much understand, that temporary satisfaction only is offered only by the material things. Therefore, we should very much focus our spiritual qualities and our spiritual sort of direction to derive, rather than temporary satisfaction, we should try to focus on having longer term satisfaction. I think I already mentioned it in this group. There was this very interesting experiment. It was called the Marshmallow Experiment. This marshmallow experiment was offered to young children, one marshmallow. And then the person who was doing the testing, he said, if you can wait and not take this marshmallow for the next 10 minutes or 5 minutes, I'll bring you 2 more marshmallows. And interesting enough, if you put it on YouTube, you'll find it's quite hilarious. So there's small kids and many of them be just like really looking at the marshmallow. And the moment the person let, boom, straight away in their mouth. So the answer was the restraint. If you can kind of withdraw yourself, if you can restrain yourself from immediate satisfaction, which is offered by the material nature in a form of, variety of seductive sort of means, I leave it to your imagination. If you can withdraw yourself for the means of having some superior satisfaction, that means success. That is true spiritual success. And then interesting thing was, based on this experiment, these young children, they kind of they found them 30 years later when this experiment was already done. And 30 years later, they've been adults, and they kind of observe their life, they observe their lifestyle, they observe how they've been successful in life. And this was a very interesting point. Those children which been restrained themselves in that young age and haven't taken that marshmallow, they've been actually much, much more successful in their later life. And this only shows that they had enough of intellect and intelligence to control their immediate desire for sense gratification. So immediately they restrain themselves for the higher purpose, for the higher means, for the higher satisfaction. So this is the path of Krishna conscious devotee, that we restrain ourselves, we reject these immediate sort of sense gratification for the higher purpose, and that higher purpose is Krishna consciousness. Whereas Prabhupada is saying all things but Krishna give temporary satisfaction only. So if we are to have complete satisfaction, we must take to the questions and answers about Krishna. So yeah, I'll repeat the verse again, just a translation. All sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. So we touch upon a few points. Uh, Thank you very much. If there are any points or any questions or anything the devotees desire to share or ask, please do so now. Hare Krishna. Also, in the past, we had these options that if you don't wish to voice your question, you can send me a personal message and I'll read it in anonymous kind of a way, and we can discuss like that if devotees feel rather more comfortable in this way.
Hare Krishna, Antaranga Prabhu.
Hari
Please
Bol.
accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Oh gosh.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
I really found it very enlightening, this class, the way you are sort of started off that, reading Bhagavatam, listening to Bhagavan, this is the only way we can do welfare. If we're not something, you want to go and do some social work or anything, if we just concentrate ourselves, studying Bhagavatam, listening Bhagavatam, that's the way actually we are, like the way you have mentioned, we are actually doing a lot for the society because we are developing ourselves spiritually. So these vibrations will go in the air, and that will actually purify the environment within ourselves, and it will repel to whoever we meet and whoever we speak to. It will definitely have a lot of effect. So that's very nice point I just felt. And one other thing, just you mentioned that question and answer, like Srila Prabhupada said, in the morning the birds are chirping, they're answering and question and answer, question and answer. If that question and answer can be only about Krishna, that's the only way everybody is going to get benefit. Any other thing is going to be, like you mentioned, any other thing which is going to be a material gain, that's not going to help ourselves. That's a temporary short time. And so that's why we need to cultivate ourselves in such a way so that we can bring everything, like Srila Prabhupada, every time he speaks, always the main point, Krishna. Yeah. So that's what we are here for in this Bhagavatam class, just to talk about Krishna, hear about Krishna, elevate ourselves and elevate everybody else. So wonderful class. I really appreciate. I mean, in the morning you were giving class yesterday. It was so nice. It was really, really nice. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. There's interesting pastime which happened during the pastime of Lord Chaitanya cleaning the temple. How do you call it? Gundicha Marjana,
Yeah, good.
cleaning the temple. And there was a point in it of such a spiritual sort of a saturation and ecstasy that the participants headed up by Lord Chaitanya, they haven't even using sentences or like, pass me the bucket, can I have the water, where's the brooms, or you missed a spot. But all they've been saying is Hare Krishna, Rama, Hare, Krishna, Krishna. So to such a degree, they transcended the sort of mundane level of communication that they went only to the names of the Lord. And interesting enough, because the Paramatma resides in the heart of everyone, they get it, right? Like I will come to you and I say, Krishna, Krishna. And you say, oh, yes, Krishna. And you will pass me the bucket. And then you will come to me and say, Ram, Ram, Rama, Krishna, Krishna, or something like that. And what is it? Oh, of course, Hare. And I'll give you the broom. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita transcended even the words, and they completely only stayed, or only which was left was the pure chanting of the Lord, of the holy names of the Lord, which was saturated not only with spiritual knowledge or some sort of a spiritual rasa, but at the same time they denotated instruction or a question or an answer. So that was an interesting point.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anything else devotees wish to share or ask? Again, I'll remind that there's also an option of sending me like a personal message. I can read it without mentioning your name, and we can discuss like that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for a wonderful class. Prabhu, I have a practical question for you to guide grahastas. In day-to-day activities, grahastas have to deal with a whole variety of things and a whole variety of different people as well. Not all are necessarily devotees. You have, work, you have karmis to have to deal with, you have to deal with mundane subject matters as well. And whilst doing devotional practice and reading Bhagavatam, etc., one can fully absorb ourselves. But when one is interacting with mundane subject matters, that are required to be done for work or other obligations, one gets detracted away from Krishna and Bhagavatam, and sort of the consciousness drifts away. How do we bring it back in day-to-day practice? I'm sorry, I'm asking a brahmachari where your 100% time is focused on Krishna, but we unfortunately, grahastas, don't have that luxury of being able to spend 100% of our time on that. How would you advise grahasta ashrams, practitioners in devotional service, to try and dovetail mundane activities also into Krishna consciousness?
That's a very good question. I think it's a very practical one. My humble kind of a suggestion or point, which I heard from classes of my spiritual master, is that create something which is called Udipan. Udipan basically means that you kind of reprogram, you deprogram the information which is allocated to a specific object, right? Okay, let me explain. Phone, okay, phone. Normal kind of a mundane thing. But for a karmi person, phone is an opportunity to do a variety of, I don't know, social media, taking pictures, doing your emails or whatever. But for a devotee, phone can be, okay, this means me getting in touch with my spiritual master. This is a means for me getting in touch with listening to Srila Prabhupada. This is a means for me to take pictures of the Vaishnavas and the deities. This is a means for me to get connected with other devotees and arrange sanghas or whatnot. So it means that, for instance, try to spiritualize your so-called mundane activities. So I don't know exactly what you do in terms of your profession, but for instance, you have a meeting, then try to have like a Bhagavatam in the back of your head. Let's say someone say, oh, this is a big problem. This is something which we cannot really create a solution. And you can straight away remember. You can straight away remember the awkward situation of Yudhishthira Maharaj when he's supposed to lie to that, what was it? Was it Kripacharya? Was it that the name of the elephant was on a similar name of the
Ashwatthama.
Ashwatthama. So Ashwatthama is dead. So you can straight away spiritualize your sort of mundane activities. You see, people have this concept that spirituality means no connection with the material world. Like, for instance, do you devotees think that, for instance, Arjuna, right, when he was on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he was not necessarily thinking about Krishna. He was actually almost even offending Krishna, because the way the chariots are actually positioned, the charioteer and the one who's shooting, is that the way to indicate the direction, you actually tap with your feet on the shoulders of the one who's riding the chariot. So, so Arjuna was tapping feet on the shoulders of Krishna, like boom, boom, right? Go left, go right. So that's almost like flipping offensive, But and Arjuna was not thinking about Krishna. He was thinking about how to arrange his akshahunis. He was thinking about where the military formations need to go. He was thinking about who he's going to be facing next. He was thinking about that, oh, that military phalanx in the distance, that will be a problem. I need to go there. So mundane, it was almost like a mundane thinking. But the resultive activity was to please the Lord. So you as a grihasta devotee, by you being a very nice gentleman, a wonderful person from a mundane perspective, like being trustworthy, being equipoised, being helpful, being charitable, offering prasadam to others, and so on, people will start feeling attracted to your qualities. And then they will ask, well, how come you're such a polite person? Well, I'm a practitioner of this ancient path of Krishna consciousness, and I am a part of a very wonderful school called Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So for Grihastas, the best way to sort of spiritualize their activities is understanding for who we're doing it and who we're representing, right? We're representing Guru, we're representing Lord Chaitanya, we're representing Srila Prabhupada. So within this sort of meditation in our hearts and in our minds, even our day-to-day lifestyle become a poetry. It will become a representation of something higher than we are. And in terms of practical tips, take some pictures of Krishna in your office. When you have a break, listen to some prayers. I love Brahma Samhita. Recitation of Brahma Samhita is amazing. Try to fit maybe one verse, one shloka of Bhagavatam between your sessions or between your work time, and somehow or another it will take a completely different direction. I don't know if that's sufficient. Thank you, Prabhu, for the question.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Then we have some private questions. One devotee is asking, how do we listen to daytime classes? Like I have this program. It's very simple. It's just called Documents. You just go on, this is iPhone, so App Store. You download something called Documents, and then through these Documents app, you go on Desire Tree, and I'm just downloading Prabhupada's classes one by one, canto by canto. And whenever I have a spare time, I just, instead of listening to Metallica and Guns N' Roses, I listen to Prabhupada giving classes. Another question, what does it mean when one does not have questions? If one does not have questions, it can indicate only two things. One thing, I know it. And second thing, I'm not interested. Because questions, what they indicate is that you churn it. You churn the philosophy. You're not accepting things blindly. You're utilizing your intelligence. You dissect, you box, you try to differentiate between variety of statements of the Bhagavata, and you engaging your intellect. So what does it mean when one does not have a question? It means that you're not utilizing your intellect correctly to the depth which is required of you. If it sounds offensive, I'm sorry, but it's like that. Questions means that you're thinking about it. You don't accepting things blindly. You think about these things, and then you digesting them, Because if you don't ask questions, that means, as I said, either you already know and understand, but even then you can ask a question, or you don't understand and you're not interested. Another question. Oof, this one is quite intimate. I'm having problems with my husband, wants to eat more meat, and I don't eat, and I'm a spiritual, but make it difficult for me as I end touching his dishes, although I don't cook it. Okay, okay, this is, I would say, really take shelter of some Grihastha devotees who can facilitate much more mature answer than I can. Well, Prabhupada says, as a wife should be serving her husband to the best way possible, to the best means, without creating any unnecessary agitation within the family. Try to always offer maybe some kind of a prasadam, and maybe take your good husband to some kind of maybe temple to eat some prasadam, offer some options. Or actually, once I did this experiment with my parents, they've been asking for also meat, to eat meat. So what I did, I bought this these, like, it looks like meat, it tastes like meat, but it's kind of like a vegan type of preparation, and I offer it to them. I said, look, I cooked meat for you, so why don't you take it and why don't you eat it? And as they've been eating, when they finished, they, oh, this is very nice. And I said, well, did you know that this was actually purely vegan? It had nothing to do with no meat. And so, oh, we couldn't even understand the difference. Therefore, there's always an option. Maybe it's think of an ego, or if we can offer, we can also offer an option of like a vegan sort of stuff. If there are any online questions or anything devotees wish to ask now, otherwise I'll continue through these private messages. Corn, yeah, corn. Yeah, I used to eat that. That was very nice. Once I went actually into rubbish bin when I throw the package, and I eat it. This was like 7-8 years ago, and I'm, my God, are you sure this is actually vegan? Because I couldn't believe. I mean, I couldn't believe this is like vegan stuff. It tasted like chicken. Anyway, yeah, if there are no spoken question or voice questions, I'm just going to continue. There's a one point, I hope I can remind myself or to nourish my soul bit as I'm constantly caught up in the material things. Yes, if we don't nourish ourselves spiritually, then we can see how we switch off, how our spirituality switches off, and how slowly we will dwindle and become much more unsatisfied, kind of disturbed. Therefore, spiritual nourishment is a self-care, is the truly most highest elevated sort of a self-care you can actually offer to yourself. And specifically for me, for instance, it's just reading Bhagavatam. It's just it's something which really pacifies the mind. It really pacifies the intellect, and that offers you strength and power to also correct your emotions. Emotions can sometimes really give you headache, right? Variety of emotions, uncontrolled emotions. But if you nourish your intellect, your intelligence, you can pacify those difficult emotions, and that's very interesting thing. So just by reading spiritual books, you become much more emotionally stable as well. That's a fact. Another point: are we really wasting this human life, spending a lot of time on mundane jobs, or it's okay to balance with 16 rounds of chanting a few basic things? 2-3 hours a day for in Krishna consciousness, thus working for Krishna, still elevates us. Very much so. Very much so. Yes, it does elevate us, because that's what you see. Every varna and every ashram has certain yamas and niyamas, which means things which you can do and things which you should not do. And part of the grihastha community is that there is some limited sort of sense gratification is offered there, but also there are a lot of responsibilities as a grihastha. One of the main duties of grihasthas, which are sometimes quite neglected, is that one of the main things that grihastas should do. They should cook. They should do a lot of like cooking. And this is an interesting thing. We should cook for Krishna, obviously offer the bhoga to the Lord, create prasada, and feed others. And believe it or not, this is one of the very satisfying things to actually do in Grihastha ashram, to offer sanctified spiritual food and offer it to others, and see how people becoming more spiritualized just by eating. So it's one of the main duties of Grihasthas to feed, to provide food for others as well. Obviously, another means for grihastas to purifying their income is to offering it. And I'm not saying like, you don't necessarily need to like give it to the temple. Or what you can do, you can use that Lakshmi which you receive and create a garden and offer fresh, beautiful flowers to your lordships. Take that Lakshmi and make that beautiful carved altar, or take that Lakshmi and buy new types of clothes for your wonderful deities, or once every 2 weeks on Ekadashi, just cook a feast, or something like that. So one of the main points is feeding others, but also spending some portion of that income for spiritual activities, or buying books. I'm not saying this because I'm a Sankirtan devotee, but buying books and distributing it to others. So well, that's one of the main things about Grihastha ashram, right? Giving dakshina and offering dakshina to others. So thank you for that. There's one point. Be careful of corn, it has egg in it. Does it? Okay. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have overcome. How to overcome of the guilty feeling we have made a mistake and we cannot do anything about it. Guilty, yes, guilty feelings, yeah. The thing is, you have two options when you have some guilt within you. Option number one, just let go of all the activities which you've been doing, all that spiritual things, and just go back to the material life. That's option number one. Option number two is the more sort of a spiritual option, and that is learn from that mistake, absorb that mistake, and try to not do it again. But you see, we should not mentally punish ourselves and do some kind of a self-destruction, because that will not help anyone. We should learn from it, understand it, where is it coming from, what was the root of me performing the negative activity in the first place. But ultimately we should go beyond it. We should not dwell on it that much. We should chant Hare Krishna. Maybe if that helps you perform some austerities, like, I don't know, fast for a day, or read extra hour, or do whatever it needs to be done. But if there are guilty things within in your life, don't punish yourself. That's the worst thing. Actually, the worst thing is that devotees, more than anything, they hurt themselves, because this path is very high bar. Prabhupada set up the standards and the bar very, very high, and we are very fallible, and we have tendencies to fail. So unfortunately, things like this happened, but don't allow that to become an obstacle in your further devotional progress. Just be like a plow, be like a bulldozer, and just plow through all these anarthas which we naturally have. So don't be too tough on yourself, and yeah, be happy. So thank you so much. If there are any other points or any other questions, I will say good night to all of you. It was very wonderful. It was very nice. Thank you for the attention, and wishing you all the best in the other half of the week. May Shri Radha Gokulananda bless you all. And yeah, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yay.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hari Bol.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.